You know that feeling when you buy a game at full price, then quit after 5 hours and never touch it again? Yeah, we've all done that. But every once in a while, a game shows up that completely justifies the money you spent on it. The kind of game where you sit back after the credits roll and think, all right, that was absolutely worth it. So, here are 20 must-play games you won't regret spending money on. Uncharted 4 is a must-play if you're into big cinematic adventure games. The story follows Nathan Drake after he gets pulled back into treasure hunting by his brother Sam, which quickly turns into another globe-trotting search filled with lost history, old rivalries, and places that look way too dangerous to climb on. The gameplay is just really fun across the board. Shooting feels tighter than the older games, stealth actually gives you options, and the grappling hook adds a lot to movement and exploration. But one of the biggest strengths of Uncharted 4 is the pacing. 1 minute you're exploring ruins or solving puzzles, the next you're in the middle of a huge chase scene, wondering how things escalated that fast. The whole adventure just moves really naturally from one moment to the next.
For those who prove worthy, paradise awaits.
Took a long time for him to get out of this game.
He's meant for this life.
Oh, crap!
Last I checked, we're all a bunch of thieves, digging around where we shouldn't.
Shame we're not on the same side.
I am a man of fortune, and I must seek my fortune.
So, are you ready to seek your fortune?
Hang on, Nathan!
Where is the artifact?
Heads up! Go!
Gonna stay here when this is all done? What do you want?
I want to go to Earth.
What the hell is going on here? And why are these things trying to kill us?
While I was preparing to depart for Earth, the moonquake struck, damaging Edis.
Enacting attack protocol. Permission to commit acts of controlled violence granted.
You gotta be kidding me.
I'm calling it. You'd make a lousy friend.
Pragmata already looks pretty interesting just from the way its gameplay is designed. You play as Hugh, a stranded space explorer trying to escape a lunar research station alongside an android girl named Diana after the whole place gets taken over by hostile AI systems. The setup is simple, but the Hugh and Diana dynamic does a lot to give the game its own identity. The main hook here is the dual-character gameplay. Hugh handles the movement and shooting, while Diana hacks enemies and systems in real time. So combat isn't just about shooting robots until they stop moving. You're breaking defenses, exposing weak points, using hacking during fights, and relying on both characters' abilities during exploration too. It gives Pragmata a pretty different rhythm compared to a typical third-person shooter, and that alone makes the game feel a lot more interesting. Silent Hill 2 Remake is a pretty easy pick for a must-play horror game because it understands that good horror is not just about monsters chasing you around. You play as James Sunderland after getting a letter from his dead wife asking him to return to Silent Hill. The remake keeps the psychological horror identity of the original while making the whole thing feel much more modern and approachable. Combat is more direct this time because of the third-person camera, but it still keeps that uncomfortable survival horror feel. You've got melee weapons like pipes and wooden planks for close fights, along with firearms for situations where getting too close sounds like a terrible idea. But the game never really turns James into an action hero. Ammo matters, enemies can still overwhelm you, and fights usually feel tense, messy, and a little desperate instead of clean action movie combat.
It doesn't matter if you're smart, dumb, ugly, pretty, it's all the same once you're dead. And a corpse can't laugh!
Stay with me. Don't leave me alone again. You're supposed to take care of me.
I know what you are. I know why I needed you. But it's all over now.
I don't need you anymore.
Returnal is the kind of game where the combat starts feeling ridiculously good once you settle into its rhythm. You play as Celine, a space explorer trapped on the alien planet Atropos, stuck in a time loop where every death resets the cycle but changes parts of the world around you. It's a setup that fits the roguelike structure really well, because learning through failure is basically part of the experience. The biggest reason to play Returnal is the gameplay. Combat is built around constant movement, aggressive enemies, bullet hell attacks flying everywhere, and a system that rewards staying mobile instead of hiding behind cover. Every run changes your loadout, artifacts, and path through the world, so you're constantly adjusting your playstyle depending on what the game gives you. Some weapons lean into fast, close-range damage, others turn fights into full projectile spam, and finding a strong setup can completely change how a run feels.
Choice is to keep fighting, to keep looking for answers. My only hope is to break the cycle. Before the cycle breaks me.
Fatal Frame 2 Remake is a must-play if you want horror that feels very different from the usual survival horror formula. The story follows twin sisters Mio and Mayu after they wander into a lost village filled with hostile spirits, and things get unsettling pretty quickly. Instead of shooting monsters with guns or fighting them with melee weapons, you deal with ghosts by taking photos of them. The catch is that stronger shots usually mean letting spirits get dangerously close before snapping the picture. So combat constantly puts you in that uncomfortable position of staring directly at the thing trying to kill you. Gameplay mixes exploration, puzzle solving, resource management, and ghost combat built around timing, positioning, and knowing when to go for stronger shots. Different camera upgrades, lenses, and film types also add a little strategy to fights.
The lost village.
The ritual will begin soon.
Come on, let's get out of here. Mayu, stop! Mayu! The camera obscura.
Don't look down there.
Everyone died.
Are you?
I've come to tell you that you don't have to obey them anymore.
Get away!
Fight Jericho!
I know someone who can help you.
Pull the trigger. How do I know you are not a deviant?
They are not machines!
I could take you there.
Go! See that!
My name is Connor.
My name is Marcus.
Detroit Become Human is a pretty easy recommendation if you enjoy interactive, story-driven games. The game takes place in a near-future Detroit where androids have become part of everyday life, and you follow 3 different android protagonists whose stories slowly start connecting in interesting ways. Each character sees the world from a completely different perspective, which helps keep the story feeling varied the whole way through. The gameplay leans heavily into dialogue choices, investigations, quick-time events, and branching story paths that can completely change scenes, relationships, and even which characters survive. The game also does a good job of keeping the pacing moving. One moment you're investigating a crime scene as Connor, the next you're sneaking through the city with Kara, then suddenly dealing with protests and conflict as Marcus. The Evil Within 2 is one of those games that takes the first game's survival horror formula and expands on it in some really smart ways. Sebastian Castellanos gets pulled back into the STEM system after learning his daughter might still be alive, and that immediately gives the story a much more personal angle. He's not just trying to survive another nightmare anymore. Now there's an actual reason pulling him back into all this chaos. The gameplay mixes shooting, stealth, and resource management inside semi-open environments that are surprisingly fun to search through. You can sneak around enemies, set traps, or make a terrible decision and hope you still have enough bullets left afterward. Combat keeps that survival horror tension too. Resources matter, enemies can hit hard, and the game gives you different ways to handle encounters really well.
Hello? Sebastian, are you there?
Lily?
Snitch! I came on to take down his son on you, not to shuffle the deck.
We knew you would become personally attached.
You tell Mr. Lee that his people stay the fuck out of our territory, and in return, we'll let him live. It's war now. You want the chairman? I report to him now. You want the Red Poles? I'm one of them. Show these motherfuckers!
Sleeping Dogs is a pretty fun open-world crime game that takes a lot of inspiration from Hong Kong action movies, and that's a big part of why it still works so well. The story follows undercover cop Wei Shen as he infiltrates the Triads, which means he's constantly caught between doing his job and getting pulled deeper into the criminal world around him. The gameplay is a huge part of why the game is still enjoyable. The melee combat has way more weight than you'd normally expect from an open-world crime game. Counterattacks, combos, environmental takedowns, it all feels really satisfying. And on top of that, you've still got driving, shootouts, side activities, and a dense version of Hong Kong to explore. A lot of games in this genre lean heavily on gunplay. Sleeping Dogs does too, but the hand-to-hand combat is really where the game has the most fun. Directive 8020 is an interactive horror game from Supermassive. So if you've played Until Dawn or the Dark Pictures anthology, you already know the style. But this time, the studio is leaning much harder into sci-fi survival horror. You're part of the crew aboard the colony ship Cassiopeia, searching for humanity's next home after Earth starts running out of options. Then things go very wrong once a shape-shifting alien threat shows up, and yeah, the alien and the thing inspiration is pretty easy to spot. The gameplay still centers around choices, branching story paths, and characters who may or may not survive depending on what you do. But this one puts a bigger focus on exploration, survival mechanics, and more hands-on gameplay. You'll be scanning areas, sneaking around threats, and dealing with situations where one bad call can make everything worse really fast.
Don't you ever point that thing at me again.
Scan complete. Subject unidentifiable.
NieR Replicant is one of those RPGs that can feel a little strange at first, but the more you play, the more it starts pulling you into its world, characters, and story without you really noticing. The story follows a young man searching for a cure for his sister, traveling alongside a talking book named Grimoire Weiss. The combat feels much smoother in this version, with fast-action RPG gameplay built around swords, magic abilities, weapon upgrades, and boss fights that occasionally start pulling ideas from completely different genres, because NieR really likes surprising people. One moment you're fighting normally, then suddenly the game shifts into something that barely even feels like a traditional action RPG anymore. Different weapons change the pace of combat quite a bit too. Smaller weapons feel faster and more mobile. Heavier weapons hit harder. Magic abilities add extra options during fights. Alan Wake Remastered is one of those games where the atmosphere does a lot of the heavy lifting, and somehow it still works really well all these years later. If you never played the original, it's basically a psychological action thriller where you play as a writer trapped in a small town that starts turning into a complete nightmare. The big thing with Alan Wake has always been the light mechanic. Most enemies are covered in this darkness shield, so before you can even shoot them properly, you have to burn the darkness away with flashlights, flares, and other light sources. It also has that very specific early 2010s Remedy style, where the game feels halfway between a TV series and a psychological horror story. There are narration segments, strange characters, creepy forests, random talk show moments, and a lot of what is actually happening right now energy throughout the whole thing.
My wife Alice, she's missing.
Calm down, Mr. Winter.
Last night I woke up to a nightmare. I was missing a week. What had happened to me? I squeezed the flashlight like my life depended on it. With it, I could save myself. I could save Alice.
Carl Stucky.
Pleased
to meet you.
Clair Obscur Expedition 33 has a pretty great setup for an RPG. Every year, a mysterious figure called the Paintress paints a number, and everyone older than that number dies. So naturally, Expedition 33 decides maybe somebody should do something about that before the number gets any lower. The big hook here is the combat. It's turn-based, but it mixes in real-time mechanics like timed attacks, dodges, parries, and aiming. So you're not just sitting there scrolling through menus while your party politely waits for their turn. You actually have to pay attention during fights, which I always like in turn-based games. Visually, the game also has a really distinct style. You've got this dark fantasy world mixed with a French Belle Epoque aesthetic, which is not exactly the combination most RPGs are going for. But it works. The environments look great, the enemy designs are weird in a good way, and the whole thing has a very specific identity right out of the gate.
Only going to make things worse for everyone.
No. She chose to come. I didn't make the rules between you two.
You're fighting to change things.
For those who come after. Right?
Thought I was used to losing people.
Yeah, me too.
Subnautica 2 really doesn't need to do much to get people interested. Just hearing new Subnautica is probably enough for a lot of players. Because if you played the first game, you already know the deal. Beautiful ocean exploration mixed with constant low-level panic. This time around, the game is bringing players back into an alien underwater world with new biomes, new creatures, new survival systems, and co-op support, which is probably the biggest change here. Exploring deep underwater caves is already stressful by yourself. Doing it with friends sounds fun right up until somebody says, "What is that thing behind us?" And suddenly everybody's swimming in different directions. The core survival stuff is still a huge part of the appeal too. Gathering resources, building bases, upgrading gear, pushing deeper into places you probably shouldn't be going yet. That loop just works.
Your new life begins.
Resident Evil 2 Remake is still probably one of the best examples of how to remake a classic game without losing what made people love it in the first place. It keeps the survival horror feel of the original, but modernizes basically everything around it. You're playing as Leon Kennedy and Claire Redfield, trying to survive the complete disaster happening in Raccoon City, and the police station alone might still be one of the best horror locations Capcom has ever made. Every hallway feels dangerous, every locked door feels suspicious, and eventually Mr. X starts walking around the building like he pays rent there. The combat also hits a really good balance between action and survival horror. Zombies are slow, but they absorb bullets like absolute champions, so every fight becomes this decision of, do I waste ammo here or just run for my life? Which usually turns into both.
Seems to be evolving much faster than expected.
Nobody cares about that. They want to know about the G virus.
What exactly are you looking for?
More info on the people responsible for this mess.
What the?
I swear, you bastard, if you hurt her.
Identify yourself.
Stop! You'll never get the G virus!
Sure, come on. Daddy, no! Claire, wake up!
After you.
Cronos, the New Dawn, has a pretty simple rule. Don't let the monsters merge. Which sounds manageable, right up until you realize dead enemies can get absorbed by other enemies and come back bigger, meaner, and way more annoying to deal with. That's a cool mechanic. This is Bloober Team going full sci-fi survival horror. You're playing as a traveler moving between a ruined future and an alternate version of 1980s Poland, trying to extract people who didn't survive some very bad apocalypse situation. Which is already a pretty solid setup for a horror game. Gameplay-wise, it leans into limited resources, heavy atmosphere, third-person combat, and managing enemies carefully before fights spiral out of control. And the whole retro-futuristic look gives it a different flavor from the usual abandoned hospital, creepy mansion horror formula. Not that there's anything wrong with creepy mansions. Horror games have gotten a lot of mileage out of those.
What do you see? Giant. Sleeping. Again. Animals. Fighting. Again.
Control me. Now, I will tear them apart. One by one.
Dying Light the Beast feels a lot more focused compared to Dying Light 2, and bringing Kyle Crane back already gives the whole thing a different vibe. This time you're escaping after years of experiments, and now Crane's basically stuck somewhere between human and monster, which honestly sounds very on-brand for this series. The big thing here is that Techland seems to be leaning harder into survival horror again, while still keeping all the parkour and melee combat the series is known for. So you're still sprinting across rooftops, drop-kicking zombies off buildings, and crafting ridiculous weapons out of random junk. but there's a heavier tone this time around. The new beast abilities also look pretty fun. Crane can tap into these mutant powers during combat, so fights can suddenly turn from, I should probably run, into full zombie blender mode pretty quickly. And knowing Dying Light, nighttime is probably still going to be everybody's least favorite time of day. It Takes Two is basically proof that co-op games can still be ridiculously creative when developers fully commit to the idea. The setup is simple. A married couple on the edge of divorce gets turned into tiny dolls and suddenly has to work together through a very weird, magical situation, which, as relationship counseling goes, feels unnecessarily intense. The best thing about this game is how often it changes things up. Every chapter throws new mechanics at you. One minute you're platforming, the next you're doing puzzles, flying planes, fighting squirrels, using magnets, cloning yourselves, or doing something else that sounds completely made up until the game actually makes it work. And that's really why the game is so easy to recommend. It never feels like it's repeating itself. Hazelight just keeps introducing new ideas at a pace where you barely have time to say, "Oh, that's cool," before the game hands you another mechanic.
I wish you could be friends again.
What? Are you ready for the roller coaster ride of your life? No. Hey!
Fate only binds you if you let it. Do what is necessary. Not because it is written.
God of War Ragnarök pretty much takes everything the 2018 game did well and just pushes it further. Bigger fights, more areas to explore, more enemy variety, more story, more of Kratos trying very hard to be a calmer person while the universe keeps refusing to make that easy. Combat still feels great too. You've got the Leviathan axe, the Blades of Chaos, the spear, and a combat system that gives you plenty of room to play aggressively or get a little more tactical with builds and abilities. Also, throwing an axe and calling it back never really stops being satisfying. Some mechanics just have permanent job security. The game also does a nice job mixing big spectacle moments with smaller character scenes. One minute you're dealing with gods, giant creatures, and end-of-the-world problems, and the next you're listening to Kratos and Atreus have a conversation while paddling through a lake. Metro Exodus feels a lot different compared to the earlier Metro games, mostly because you're finally leaving the tunnels behind and traveling across post-apocalyptic Russia on this giant train called the Aurora. Which sounds exciting until you remember the Metro universe is filled with mutants, radiation, bandits, and people who absolutely need to calm down. The survival elements are still a huge part of the experience too. You're constantly scavenging for ammo, crafting supplies, cleaning weapons, swapping filters, and trying not to get ripped apart by whatever creature is hiding in the next dark building. What I always liked about Metro is how immersive everything feels. The gas mask, the flickering flashlight, checking your map physically instead of pausing the game, wiping dirt off your mask during storms. Little details like that make the world feel way more grounded. Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice plays very differently from a typical From Software game, and that's probably the first thing people notice. You can't just roll around everything and slowly chip away at boss health bars. The game wants you standing your ground, reading attacks, and learning how to parry properly. Which sounds cool until a boss deletes you in about 12 seconds. The combat system is really the whole thing here. Fights are built around posture, timing, aggression, and breaking your opponent's defense instead of just doing damage. When it clicks, it feels amazing. You stop panicking, start matching enemy rhythm, and suddenly you're deflecting attacks like you actually know what you're doing. The grappling hook also changes the flow a lot compared to other From Software games. You've got more mobility, more vertical exploration, stealth options, hidden paths, all that stuff. It gives the game its own identity instead of just feeling like Samurai Dark Souls.
What's the matter, Stray? Nothing left to lose? Well, would you look at that? Will you join me, starving wolf? That day, I pulled you from the battlefield. I had no idea